We had a store we bought the end of 2018. It was a first seller finance deal we structured. The manager was like terrible. Techs are like, one of them was drinking on the job. We completely clean house. The next year we did 1.8 million. We doubled.
Wow.
We almost doubled the sales. So we put put 50 grand in this thing. We made 400 grand the next year.
What's up, everyone? This is Car Dealership Guy. You're listening to the Car Dealership Guy podcast, which is my effort to give you access to the most unbiased and transparent insights into the car market. Let's get into today's episode. Brian Beers is the president of Prenlyn Automotive Group, a 32-store auto repair group that's focused on buying Midas auto repair franchises. Brian took me through the nuts and bolts of what it's like to run 32 auto shops. This was a fascinating conversation. We discussed going from software development to auto repair, pros and cons of franchising, how much money each auto repair shop makes, how Brian sources new shops to buy, his best and worst deals, how consumers can maximize their dollars spent when getting a car repaired, and Brian's predictions for the auto repair industry. Here's my conversation with Brian Beers.
All views of Car Dealership Guy and guests on this podcast are solely their opinions. None of the views expressed should be treated as financial advice. This podcast is for informational purposes only.
We got Brian Beers on the pod. Brian, how are you?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Brian, so I'm super excited about this. I think there's just a ton of great content here to share and to discuss. Auto repair in general right now is having a moment with, car prices, eclipsing all-time highs, interest rates. People are definitely keeping their cars longer. They're fixing them. They're paying more to fix them. And so I think there's just going to be a lot to cover, and I'm really pumped about it. Can you tell us, how did you get into this business? What is your background?
Yeah, so we're it's like a legacy business. My dad started in the 70s. We've run Midas, automotive repair franchises. He started it because his uncles in Boston or whatever was into it. So it was just kind of like, he was 22 years old looking for something to do, got into it with my granddad, started with one location. Him and my uncle, over the course of 30 years, grew it to about 6 to 8 locations. I kind of bought and sold them, all in the Philadelphia metro. And then I joined in 2010 after college. The 08, 09 had been kind of rough on them. They were tired. They were going to sell it, just kind of walk away. Weren't making any money. And I come and breathe this whole new life of into the business. And I travel the country. I learned best practices from other franchisees, and took 6 years, and then started to acquire other existing franchisees that want to get out. We kind of snowballed our cash from the locations we were acquiring into the next one and the next one, and the short version is, as of today, we have, which is my brother and I, 32 locations between Philadelphia and Allentown, which is like an hour north of Philly, and North New Jersey. It's kind of our territory.
Incredible. Now, did you see yourself joining the auto repair business? I feel like it's so unsexy, and you're, like you said, you're in college. Like, what was that like, thinking through that?
Yeah, so at the time, I was kind of like a techie guy. I was into like software development. I had a job on South. I went to school in Miami.
Which by the way, that's even crazier to me that you were into software development and now you run 32
I did and I was like light
shops.
Software development. It's like, I was like, I could make like basic, like database driven like web apps and stuff. Like I wasn't terrible, but I'm no like Silicon Valley guy. But anyway, I had this job, on South Beach working in some software stuff. And then I saw a lot of, talking to them, like a lot of old school, just like, my dad, of course, like there wasn't a ton of software or data behind it. And so I kind of figured, hey, I could come in and, we could add a lot of this software stuff to like streamline the business, have better reporting, have better insights, and like, kind of bring us into the modern world. And maybe that would create some synergies. And so, as of today, like we have a ton of tech in terms of like, at least in the franchise world, we use Slack. Like all the stores communicate on Slack. So we've got 32 locations, but nobody's on an island. They're competing throughout the day on jobs and celebrating success.
Who actually uses Slack?
Who uses it? The store managers and the assistant managers, and then all of our back office team.
We did something funny one time. It was totally my decision. And it did not work, but we gave Slack initially to every single employee.
Oh yeah. We've done that.
So,
we took it
away. Yeah, that's an interesting experiment, technicians and Slack. It's just funny.
Oh, yeah.
Different uses for everyone and how that works out. So I digress. Anyways,
stuff like that. We try to leverage technology and to make, just improve the business. So,
yeah. So going back to that initial entry into the business now, when you first came in, right? Like today you run you're the president of the company, you're running the business. What did you initially do? How did you actually get acclimated again, I'm putting myself in your shoes. And I think that the shop it's definitely a different, it's a dirtier part of the business. There's more of that tribal knowledge comes in handy. So how did you just get acclimated so quickly to the
Yeah, I
business?
mean, I worked 60 hours a week in the stores. I mean, I was like, my first day, I was kind of like an assistant manager of a sense, where I would just float between the stores and learn the point of sale. I'd talk to the technicians. I'd like quiz them on, what they found, why they need to fix it, how they'd prioritize like all this work that they were recommending. And, I'd build the tickets, eventually
Yeah.
I'd sell the jobs. I mean, I was a store manager for a while. And then eventually I kind of, as I got acclimated to it and, saw like we needed to make certain changes and culture fit guys that weren't right. Yeah, I became kind of like the district manager of a sense where all the 6 stores at the time kind of reported up to me. And then I started, making our changes and, continued to kind of elevate myself. But honestly, it was just working in the stores like 5, 6 days a week and traveling around the country and learning from others.
Before we get into the nitty gritty of how you source shops, economics and all that, I'm curious to know why franchise, right? Like
Yeah.
why have the franchise shackles? And I say that obviously it sounds like a negative connotation, which
Yep.
you're smiling when I'm going to assume it's a good thing, but tell me why franchise? Like, how to run this business. Why don't you escape the franchise world? Like, what benefit does that bring you?
Yeah. Multiple ones. So first, in our business, the biggest challenge is real estate, right? Retail automotive, we need 4,000 square foot on a major road that's like, zoned automotive. And so, you look around these days, especially in the Northeast, where we're at, like it is becoming harder and harder to find those spots. And a lot of those prime spots are major brands, right? They're franchises or they're corporate. And so the number one thing that we get as a franchise is access to like have those shops, right? Occupy those shops. Like I can go and I can take over a store that has a great spot. We're looking now for more real estate and we can't find it. Like, and we don't have like the unit economics don't necessarily work that we can go and buy some lot and like build this, 6,000 square foot shop or whatever it would be. And so that's a big part of it is access to real estate, the
So you're
speed to
saying pre-existing shops, right? Is that what you're
pre-existing
referring to?
shops. Like most
Got
of
it.
ours have been acquisitions. Like we've opened 2 stores new. The other 30 have been acquisitions.
Wow.
And so so that's the other big reason. If I was like Beers, Tire and Auto or whatever, maybe we have one location, but then I'm like, all those Midases are never going to convert to an independent because the franchisor has real estate control. And so even if the owner wanted to, the franchisor wouldn't allow it. And so then my path as an
Wait,
independent was to,
explain that to me. Explain that to me. How does that work?
yeah,
Like,
so
isn't the owner of the franchisor?
yep. So real estate control is, there's a couple different variables, right? Depends on who owns it. Now, in Midas's case, they own some of the properties and rent to franchisees, right? Like the McDonald's model or whatever. Some are owned by a REIT. Like Midas owned a bunch back in the day, and then they needed money, so they packaged up and sold them. And they're all triple net leases too, so it's like a very attractive investment for the landlords. And so, they're tied up in these big REITs with billions of dollars. They never sell. And then you've got third-party landlords who sometimes will lease directly to Midas, who then subleases to franchisees. And then sometimes you've got third-party landlords that lease directly to franchisees or, the franchisee, like we own like 7 of our properties. But in all those cases, especially ones where third parties are involved, like the REIT or, the third-party landlords or even franchisees, they want franchisees to sign various levels of real estate control documents. Like one's an optional lease assignment, one's a conditional lease assignment. Basically, it says that, hey, I'm a third party landlord, my lease is up with the Midas franchisee, and I want to lease this thing to Mavis now or Pep Boys or whoever. They have this control document that says, we have the option to rent it, and then we would assign it to another franchisee and to kind of be the middleman. And so a lot of franchise, especially real estate based ones, have these real estate control documents in place in order to not lose like entire markets, which has
Wow.
happened in the Midas system years ago. Somebody owned an entire market, didn't agree to any of the real estate stuff, and a competitor came and they sold their shop, so they shut them down and they sold all the real estate or leased the real estate. And so in a minute they lose an entire city. And so
Why did I see Like, why did I see a couple years ago all these like Mavis discount tires pop up throughout the Northeast? Like, what's the deal
Yeah,
with
so
that?
Mavis is backed by a private equity company, and it's purely an acquisitions play. So they bought out all of the NTBs, and they just bought out the rest of like Tire Kingdoms, which is like a corporate sister brand of Midas. They're on this M&A spree, and they have, I don't know, 2,000 locations now. Maybe it's 3,000.
Wow.
But they have a completely different model than we do. Like it's completely different. Like it's a lot of
What's the
back.
core difference? Yeah, what's the core
Well,
difference
it's focused on
other than
tires.
the fact that they have like you money backing them?
Yeah, so that's a big part of it. So they buy a property for what's called 800 grand. That's, dilapidated. They fix it up. They sign themselves a lease paying like 120K a year, 150K a year, and then they sell it as, at a 5 cap or a 6 cap and flip it for like 1.5, $2 million or whatever. So they've got
Oh,
this.
they flip the property?
Yeah, so that's a huge like sale
Got it.
lease back. So they get a whole bunch of cash for selling these properties that they're the tenant. And then the goal of like them on an operational basis is just to pay this lease. And then they have all this back end money on rebates for selling boatloads and boatloads of tires.
How do you source your shops?
So yeah, franchises, right? So this is a big reason why franchises. And so, when you're part of a franchise, it's kind of like this community where everybody knows each other. And so, franchisees want to sell to other franchisees. And so when these older guys and ladies are looking to retire, they're looking for another franchisee to sell it to. The bigger, the better. It's more secure. A lot of times, our deals are seller finance, which we can talk about. And so they either come to me directly and say, "Hey, Brian, would you buy my store?" Or, I'm reaching out to them saying, "Hey, we're looking to expand in, you know, the next 6 months or in X city. Would you be interested in selling?" And, I give them all the reasons of why they should sell to me. And that's where I get most of them. Sometimes the franchisor brings me deals. Like they'll sit down with somebody, do a business review, and, they say they want to exit. The franchisor, regional manager comes to me, says, "Hey, so-and-so wants to sell. He wants 150 grand, he wants 200 grand, whatever it is." And, I call him up and we get a deal. And so, that's my primary source. The others through brokers. There's a Pep Boys that was closing down, and, we had heard about it, and we swooped in there and, got a lease with them, bought the equipment from Pep Boys corporate. We flipped the banners and up and running in like a month. And then we're looking at independents to buy too that are just off market or on market.
And you said you typically go for seller financing when you buy these?
Yeah. So we've done,
Yeah.
yeah. So most of our sales, so we have, I don't know, I forget the number, maybe 6 million more in acquisitions, almost all seller financed. And so
Wow.
kind of how that works is the seller becomes the bank. And so instead of me going out and getting a loan and paying a down payment and principal and interest, the seller, like I pay a down payment to the seller. We have a note. I pay them principal. I pay them interest. They have all the same securities a bank would. They have a personal guarantee. They have a lien on the assets. If I default, in theory, they get to keep all the money and potentially take the business back or have, a lien on the assets. So they have a lot of protections. And for me, it creates these win-win scenarios. Some cases, some of these ones we're buying like aren't profitable. Like they're potentially losing money. And so you couldn't get traditional financing on them either way. And then the cash price someone would be willing to pay, like they might not willing to accept, but a seller finance deal where it's like low money down and payments, usually we can create some win-win deals that get them cash flow, which is what they want. And we're looking for a good cash on cash return. So we have like low risk and low money into the deal. And then we have the ability to work these things into our world and get them rolling.
That's great. So what do you look for in a shop, right? Like, how do you add value? Do you even care? Like, do you just, if you can find the real estate, you'll buy it? Or do you look for some specifics?
Well, depends. So if it's an existing shop in our footprint, right? Which we kind of have these 3 distinct markets, we'll buy it. Like there's as long as it's a, 3-ish times earnings is what we want to pay. If it's losing money or
over
not
what time period? So if the
we'll
shop
take like
just
a year, the last year. So if it's making 100
Got
grand
it.
a year, we'll pay 300 grand for it.
Got it.
Generally, we try to get it owner financed, and with maybe like 50 grand down and 3 grand a month for the next whatever X amount of months or years.
And the owners like that, right? Because they have some, they're maybe retiring, but they have a consistent flow of income coming in.
Yeah, they like the cash flow. They like the fact that, when you sell on an installment loan, which is what these are, you get to you get to pay your capital gains in installments. So like instead of them getting hit all at once and then giving this money to like into the stocks or whatever, they kind of get to defer out their tax gains and then pay monthly. And so there's a huge benefit from that. And a lot of them just like they're used to making, getting that deposit every month, and like it's just natural for these like small business owners to continue that flow.
So back to my question, is there something specifically that you would look for to add value, or are you just buying everything that you can find because the real estate's so hard to find?
Yeah, so we'll buy any existing store that's in our market. Now, our problem now is we bought almost all the ones that we can buy, except for the other major players. So there's like 3 or 4 left. And I guess what we look to do maybe is kind of the better question of how do we add value, I think is what you're getting at, which a lot of it is culture, right? Every franchise and every automotive, like we're in the people business, right? We just happen to fix cars. And so a lot of it is our ability to get people, re-energized. We get them focused. We get them excited about the future. A lot of times when these older owners want to sell, like they haven't been putting any money back into the business. They're probably behind on their times. Most times their computers like don't work. The phone systems are crap. And so we go in there and they never see them. So we go in there and we have like, this whole leadership team. We get the guys on a better comp plan that can they have upward potential. It's pay for performance. We do a bunch of advertising. We generally paint the buildings. We're like, we come in with a ton of energy. And I mean, we've had cases, literally this happened a couple of weeks ago, bought 2 stores up in Allentown. It's kind of a funny story though. So we bought these 2 stores. They're both doing about $1 million each and netting terrible margins. They were netting, I want to say it was 200 grand, maybe less than that. 100 grand between both.
What's the percent margin?
Well, so these, we run about 12% roughly, all in as a company.
And these stores were netting what?
These netting were like half that. Let's call it 5.
Okay, so keep going. Yeah.
Doing about $2 million between both of them, $1 million each, and netting about 100 grand. So barely making any money. And so we go in there, buy these two stores, and the first store, everyone's like pretty excited for the change. We put on these new comp plans. We don't change much more. Immediately, they're 50% up. So now going from 20 grand to 22 grand a week, we're now doing 30 to 35 grand a week.
How?
Same exact people, same exact advertising.
And
same exact.
How'd you do that?
I have no idea.
No, but like what happened? You just came in and they saw you and they're like, let me work harder?
Yeah, I mean, it's that and like, and the comp plans help. Like they had no upside. Everybody was hourly. And so they had no incentive to move any faster.
Okay, that's meaningful. So you move them to like commission-based or...
Yeah, their techs are more commission driven. They have an hourly guarantee, which actually was the same, like pretty high guarantee that they had before. But now we give them an upside that says, hey, if you produce over X, like once you hit your nut, like you get a percentage of everything over that. And so that was the first store. The second store, everybody was like against all the changes we wanted to make, and they all quit after 3 weeks. And so we've now restaffed that store. But
why
funny.
They quit?
I don't know. They all just disappeared on a Saturday. They dropped their keys in a lockbox, and the benefits of multi-unit ownership is like we don't skip a beat because we can just rotate other guys in there. And
so that's what you typically do. You'll just rotate from another shop to one shop to the other.
Yep, if needed.
So and how are these stores doing now? The 2 stores you recently purchased.
Yeah, so the one's up. I mean, we're having record month over record month. I mean, it's doing, I don't know. It was doing about 80 to 90 grand a month, and now it's doing 130 to 140 a month. The other one's about down a little bit still because of the restaffing. But
how are you finding techs? How are you finding technicians? What do you do with that?
It's Indeed. It's everything else. It's referral based. I mean, when we bring on new people, we're trying to find out who they know that were also good techs and bring them on. We try to provide a good culture, which is, you've got this upside. Our best guys. I mean, our best guys can make our best guys $3 grand, $4 grand a week. I mean, are they crush it in their machines?
What about an average tech?
Average guys making 60 grand, something in that range
a year. So, but how do they really how is there so much variability, right? Like, is the work just there and it's like waiting for them to take the job and fix it, or why is there so much variability between techs?
Yeah, a lot of it's. I mean, it's motivation. Are they motivated to hustle, right? Bring in the car, check it out efficiently. Instead of looking at TikTok, they're on the neck. They're pulling in the next car. They're helping the new tech look under it, right? They're hustling to do a good job.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. skill set. Obviously, the guys have been doing this forever. They know what to look for. They know the tricks. When they do a job, they grab all their tools, they put it on a cart, and then they're right by the car. The inexperienced guy makes like a million steps back and forth to his box, right? And so there's like time-saving things in there. That's a big part of it. And then it's the leadership, like the speed of the leader, speed of the team. And so the leaders, sometimes we'll have that new manager come into a shop with all the same techs, and he's hustling and he's saying, hey guys, he's pushing the guys to say yes and to do more work. And he's talking about factory schedule maintenance and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, all the techs are producing twice as much as they were the week before, right?
Wow.
And so a lot of it is culture based, and that's kind of a lot of our success is trying to create that as much as we can.
What are your projected returns on an acquisition, like IRR, payback period? What are you looking for?
We don't really we're not that math driven in terms of IRRs, but kind of at this point we've built it, right? So we got all the overhead. We have district managers, we have COO, we have back office, we have all these kind of components. So we can add a new store. So I'm working on right now, I'm buying another store that's in market. And we can add that store and have zero additional incremental overhead, right? Because I've already got all the overhead set. And so, we buy this thing, I'm going to buy it for, I don't know, let's say 150 grand. I'm going to buy this thing. It's not making any money. It's like an asset sale. And so, if it can make 50 grand a year, I have a 33% return on that capital. If it can make 150K a year, I'm going to have 100% return, all my money back in the first year. And then each subsequent year, 150 after that. And so that's a little bit different than if if we were going into a new market, or if it was an hour and a half away, it was this big new thing, and I'm going to have to put a district manager, and I'm going to have to hire more office people, and I'm going to have all this overhead associated with buying that store. That one, we're going to have to build out a couple stores, and it's going to be a different model than, I've got all my fixed costs covered. This one store is totally incremental. We can transfer people to it, from it, promote it. We already have customers in that area, right? I've got all these synergies already. To add one more is not a huge deal. And a big part of the bigger you get, the easier that becomes.
Well, are there any tax shelters you're taking advantage of? I mean, I'm going to have to assume that you mentioned you own 7 of the properties, that those come with some good real estate tax shelters.
Yeah. So it depends. Yeah. So you can do cost segs where you buy and depreciate the building, but that only really matter. It depends how you set it up. If you make it part of your existing company, and treat that as active income for tax purposes, then it can wipe out some income that we make from the stores. If you keep them separate, separate LLC and separate, and you treat it more as a passive income play, you can do that cost seg, but it only affects other passive income. It can't affect your active income. So, we have one of them that we do is an active income one. All the others are more considered passive. And then we have other passive losses to offset that. The main thing is, when we buy these things, there's a lot of assets, right? And so the main thing has to do with bonus depreciation, where we can accelerate a purchase, and even though we finance it, especially seller financing, we might put 50 grand down and buy something for $300,000, and of that 200,000, let's say, is assets. We can then write off basically $200,000 that year, even though we only had 50 grand into the deal. And so that's the primary tax benefit. But then you kind of get on this hamster wheel as you do these deals, because you buy it, you get all these assets, you depreciate it, but then the next year, now you have all this income from that new thing plus your other stuff. And if you don't do another deal, our taxes,
you don't have the depreciation.
We don't have the depreciation. Now, granted, things are always breaking. We're always putting in roofs and lifts and alignment machines and all this shit, but it's not the same as the acquisition that gets us the one big chunk in a single shot.
So give us some juicy stuff. What's your best deal, your worst deal? Let's start with best.
Yeah. So the best deal, I've got a couple. It depends how you define it, but we had a store we bought the end of 2018 that was doing about $1 million. It was netting let's call it 100 grand. So the purchase price was 350. So about 3.5 times, as a multiple, but it was a first seller finance deal we structured, and we paid this guy $50,000 down. Right. And then he held a note where we paid him, I don't know, $3 grand a month, let's say, for the next 5 years. It was amortized over 10 years, but 5 years of payments with a balloon. And so that store was a funny, doing $1 million, just it was average back then. The manager was
$1 million is just top line sales,
top line
right?
revenue. Yeah. Yep. million. And in netting, like cash flow is about 100 grand, like 10%.
Yep.
But manager was like terrible. He like goes to the casino every night, sleeps in his truck, wakes up the next morning, runs a store. Like not good and not good. Techs are like, one of them is drinking on the job, like not good. So we completely clean house within a month, basically. We bring in, we had people, we knew this was happening. We had kind of guys in the wings at some other stores. So we brought in kind of our guys to the store. And literally overnight, the next year we did 1.8 million. We doubled.
Wow.
We almost doubled the sales. We made like cash flow was about 400,000. So we put put 50 grand in this thing, made 400 grand the next year. And then that store consistent. Now the notes paid off totally. And, it produces roughly that 400 grand a year. That's probably one of my best in terms of like, what's a cash on cash return? We get 8 times our money on that. Like, I don't know what the IRR is, but I could tell you it's pretty high. And so that was probably the best.
And that was in 1 year, right?
That was in 1 year.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about worst?
Yeah, so it depends. In terms of, I have a couple stores that are losers, like I lose money at, and one of them was part of a package deal. We bought a bunch of stores in New Jersey, and this store was used to be one of the best, and it just got beat up and beat up and beat up with manager changes, tech changes, like no consistency. And after we bought it, we lost $100,000 in like 9 months. So it burned, kind of wipes out all the gains we're making at other stores, right? And, we kind of thought, oh, we'd go in there, we're like these pros and, we'll get this thing making money in no time. But like and so today it's like, now it's only losing like 2 or 3 grand a month today. And so we're slowing the burn down, but it takes time. Like sometimes these stores and people know it, like you've been to these shops and like every time you go, it's like a new face and then you stop going because it's like, there's so much inconsistency.
Yeah.
And so, that was this store just for years and years and years. And so sometimes we think we have this magic touch, but like, honestly, sometimes it just takes time to
sometimes
get the right
market
in.
slaps you in the face.
And Salmon's frustrating, but we're working through it.
Yeah, but you're not going to divest it or anything. You're going to hold on to it. You're going to get it to profitability.
Yeah, I had an option to. I mean, I had an option after 18 months to not renew the lease, and just like walk away. But I couldn't. My ego was too big. I couldn't do that. Plus, we figured we'd get it turned around. We're like, we only been doing this for 18 or 12 months or whatever it was, and we're like, we'll get it. It's on a major road. It's great. It's a great neighborhood. We got a great team now, and so it's coming back. But that one's tough. We've had some other ones too, similar that like, we just struggle on getting the right people in the store, and they lose money until we get the right people in.
In terms of the actual shop and the work you sell, what are the margins? Just like run me, at a high level, like oil change, tires, mechanics. Like, how does it actually work? What do you want to get the consumer to do, spend? Like, how does that whole process work for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, it depends on the service, right? Tires are the lowest margin, probably have about 25% gross profit on the rubber, right? And then with installation and stuff, it's like 40 or 45. On service work, so we're doing like suspension or like brakes, like a radiator, that kind of thing, exhaust. Our goal is to be somewhere around 75 to 80% gross profit. So if it's like $1,000 job with parts and labor, we want to have a cost of goods of somewhere around 200 to 250. And that's kind of like top line numbers.
That's between cost and labor.
Just materials. Just
parts.
You're
saying just parts. Got it.
Yeah, and then payroll, like our tech payroll, we want around 15% is the target, and front shop labor's
15% of what?
15% of the sales
of the sale.
Yep,
got it. So total all in, if you said roughly 15% labor, and how much was the parts cost?
25.
Got it. So roughly about 40% cost, 60% margin.
Correct. Yeah, if you take technician labor and parts cost. Yep.
Got it. And then how do you try to bring customers in, right? Like, for example, come get your oil change and then let us upsell you. Like, what's that strategy for you?
Yeah. So the main things that work to attract people are oil changes and tires. In Pennsylvania, we have state inspections. And so those are kind of like the 3 like leaders to attract customers. And because people don't generally, they don't like, I'm not going to go like just get my like FSM, like factory schedule maintenance done, right? Like they come in for an oil and it's, by the way, can you check this? Or, hey, by the way, I'm hearing this noise. Or like, there's some other issue that maybe they've been deferred, but like it's the oil change or the state inspection, or sometimes a tire related issue that drive it. And so those are the three primary call to actions. In a franchise, there's like many layers of advertising. There's like national advertising, which is going to be, on TV and YouTube and like Pandora and all this, Google and SEO and all this stuff, and then I have a local budget that I spend, and we focus primarily on direct mail. And so we do like large format, huge, like 8 by 11 or whatever, huge pieces. We hit 5,000 homes within like a mile radius of the store, once a month. And
Oh, wow.
we spend $500,000 on it a year, but that works.
Is that across the entire organization?
Yeah.
Mhm.
That works really well because we can track all that from like, what are the mail routes that we mailed to? And then when customers come in, we can do a match back to see, we mailed to them in April and they came in June and they never were a customer before, or like we haven't seen them in X amount of months and they spent X amount of dollars. So we can hone in on a pretty good ROI on the direct mail spend to sales. We can then like fine tune that to see what routes perform better. And sometimes we'll see that certain routes we mail to, like we get, we mail these pieces and not a single customer comes in, and other ones, might be bonkers. And then we can also see where are customers coming from, like what mail routes, but then we're not mailing to. And so then the assumption is like, that customer profile, their neighbors might also need our services. And so then we try to mail to those people. So it's kind of this, trying to dive into the numbers and the data to figure out, how do we get in front of these people? Then it's just consistency. Then it's like, to be successful in direct mail, you got to do it like all the time, every month. People do it like
Wow.
1 month, every 6 months, or like, oh, it's not working. And it's like, well, people only get the cars fixed like twice a year. So like, you got to get in front of them the 2 times a year that
Is that
they need
true?
to-
Is it only twice a year?
2, 3. I mean, it depends. Like,
Yeah.
oil change intervals are getting longer, right? People get their oil change and state inspection done usually in the same visit. And then it's, maybe they have some sort of issue, but they're not coming once a month. They're not coming once a quarter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So 2 to 3 times, let's call it, per
Yeah.
car. And then, so you got to be in front of them in top of mind when they need the service.
Do you, if I'm a consumer, what would you tell me? Like, what's the best way to maximize the dollars I'm spending at an auto repair shop?
Yeah. So, I mean, let's take care of your car, right? And we had this one lady who had a Toyota Avalon, I think. She had like 400,000 miles on this thing, like original engine,
Wow.
original everything. She was like always getting the high mileage, or this oil changes, which are kind of like, better for the motor. She did all the FSM. She always like took care of everything, right? She was like an addict around like making sure, and she drove a ton. She was like a traveling salesperson. That was one that like, and I knew her pretty well when I was out working in the stores, because she's come in every 3 months. And, the people that take care of their cars, like they last longer. I mean, it's a known fact. The people that like don't, and they're going like way past oil change intervals, and then we check the dipstick and there's like no oil and it's super low, and that's not good for the cars. It's not good for the fuel injectors. It's not good for all these components. And so that's a big one. And I would say the main one.
Do you track like the lifetime value of your customers?
No, not it's a number we're working to get. That's one of the challenges out of our point of sale system is some of those more advanced metrics are not tracked, and this is like our internal IT team in the Philippines here of trying to develop to figure out what are some more habits of certain customers that we can track to determine like lifetime values. But one of the biggest things is that we offer a number of payment options for people. So they have like a Midas card, they can get like 6 to 12 months, or we have like a subprime option that they can get 90 days, whatever, interest free, and then it turns into a pretty high interest product. But what we see is that the consumers that do these products, they visit us twice as often. When they come, they spend twice as much. And so a consumer that we can get on a payment plan will spend with us 4 times as much as a customer who does not utilize one of these plans. We see it because of the why, right? The loyalty factor is that, do you have like a Home Depot or a Lowe's credit card?
I don't.
Okay.
I'm very picky on credit cards. I
Okay.
have 2.
So most people,
I actually just made a 3rd, just
Okay,
for a
big
very
deal.
specific reason. Yeah.
so
But go
most
ahead.
people will have only one. They go to Home Depot and they have a Home Depot card, or they go to Lowe's and they have a Lowe's card. It's
Yeah.
pretty rare to find someone who has both, right? And so part of that is because like they get the card, it creates this like mental connection to them, and then they consistently go back to that location and they go there for all their stuff. And they don't use their Home Depot card every single time, but they get comfortable at it. And it's the same thing in automotive. Like people get a Firestone card, they'll get like a Mavis or a Pep Boys or a Midas, whoever gets it first generally will keep that customer until they mess it up, and then they'll try someone else. And so that's the main thing. There's also promotions, it's whatever, interest free and high interest environments. And we can help make this like large unexpected expense affordable. And so we pitch it to our guys like, you sell cars, which is like, instead of paying $1,200, it's $200 a month, right? And we try to focus on payments instead of focusing on the large number. And then we find that we're having more and more success in that, in terms of increasing lifetime value of customers. Is financing is a key for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes total sense. And by the way, on that topic, I mean, what are you seeing in terms of your average, order per user, or average revenue per job, like whatever? I don't know, what's the metric you're tracking? Like, how are you seeing these, orders just rise in cost right now after all this demand for auto repair and inflation and whatnot?
Yeah. So our average, we call it an average RO, or average repair orders, like the
Got it.
terminology. And yeah, I mean, it's up. I mean, we're at about $350 a car right now. I'd say we were like $300 a car prior. And so it's probably up at least 10 or 15%. The other factor though is our car count's down. So we're seeing less cars. And so that's
Interesting.
part of it too, is that, it depends on the store, but like, especially lately, car count's been down, I don't know, 5%, something in that range, 2%, something in that range. And so, I think a lot of what we're losing is kind of the maintenance, the smaller, dollar repairs. And what we're seeing more of is these higher cost repairs, right? And so that
Explain
helps.
that to me. Like, how do you reconcile that?
How I view that? It was just like, when we look at the distribution of like the size of the tickets that we're doing, we're getting more, more expensive tickets and less, lower cost tickets. So less of the maintenance. So if someone comes in just for like an oil change, we're seeing less, like we're seeing less oil changes and less of these smaller tickets, right? Which lowers car count. But because we're also removing some of the lower dollar sales, like that also increases your average, right? Because you're getting rid of the small ones.
Why do you think that is? What are those people doing? Like, why do you think the lower car count is down? I know I'm just totally asking you to guess, but
yeah,
why do you think that is?
I mean, I could throw some ideas out there. I think people are driving a little bit less, right? I would think from the work from home aspect of it.
Interesting.
Some of the, and new cars have longer intervals on oil changes, right? It used to be 3,000 miles. Now it's like 7,000 miles. So I think all those, I think that, and then the work from home, and I think just the people are extending out their visits, right? And I think that's part of it. And that's like nationwide. That's not just here, that we're seeing this car count just like softening. But sales are up though, because like I said, we're seeing more of these bigger repairs. So maybe they're not coming as often, but when they come,
yeah,
they've got this, or they've got these stolen catalytic converters. I'm sure you see them. Like,
we've dealt with a ton of those.
Ton of cats, right? Being stolen and replacing those, or brake jobs and stuff that just the cost continues to rise. And so, sales are up.
I have my own opinion as a dealer, but I'm sure you do too on this topic. What are some cars that you would tell consumers to stay away from?
I think we're similar. I mean, high mileage, Land Rovers, BMWs, Mercedes, like, it's like if someone comes in with a Land Rover with a check engine light, we're like, we don't even want to deal with it, to be honest. Because we'll try to fix it, but then that, like, it won't solve the problem. And then that leads to another problem. And we guys like think we made all this money. And then by the end of the day, we're like lost money on this job, let alone all the overhead costs. And so, ton of problems that just lead one to another. Great as new cars, but like, the best ones are, the Toyotas and the Hyundais and this, my wife has a Subaru. We love it.
Turn and earn.
So
yeah, it's just the complicated luxury cars, electrical issues.
Yep.
Either we have the right tech for that, or if we're not comfortable, we'll just send it out, or we won't deal with it at all. But it's definitely the right move, because then you just get buried in these cars. And like you said, someone comes in for brakes, then they tell you that you messed their trunk latch or something. It doesn't even make sense, but sometimes it's not even worth dealing with it.
Yeah.
So I get it. let's take a bit of a step back now. When you think about your business and this industry and just everything we've gone through over the last couple of years, right? Like there's been tailwinds, there's been headwinds. I mean, it's been very, very, volatile with everything going on. What do you predict for your industry, the auto repair business? How does it evolve over these next 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years. I don't know. It's going to continue to grow, right? I mean, auto has grown consistently over decades, right? Cars don't fix themselves, right? I mean, we can all joke about AI and all this stuff, but like that's not coming towards us. We can get into like EVs and all this other things, and at the
Yeah.
end of the day,
What are you doing about EVs? What are you doing about that?
I'm doing nothing right now. But the average car we work on is 7 to 10 years old. All right, something in that range. So even if 100% of cars went EV like tomorrow, like we still have 7 to 10 years or whatever of all these gas cars, right? There's this huge, like, we don't see them for a while. So we have this long headwinds. Number two is like 60% of our business is wheel well. So brakes, tires, steering, suspension, right? Every EV has all those components. I think a couple things. I mean, I have a lot of thoughts on it, but one of them is that, they burn through tires, right? So I think tires become a bigger business. I think that there's massive consolidation. So there's going to be less bays just in the market. So then the ones that are left, right? So maybe the market shrinks a little bit, but there's going to be less bays. So then it gets consolidated,
More market
probably
share.
two
Yeah.
major players, right? We see it all the time, these independent shops going out and they become not automotive, right? So the market loses those bays. There is a whole new suite of like technical things that we can do, right? We talk about ADAS, which stands for like a advanced driver assistance system. It's like the LiDAR and the backup camera and the lane detector, all this crap. And so there's like a ton of sensors related to all those sensors and all that smart technology. And so it gets to the point where like you're going to replace a light bulb and you got to take the bumper off. And when you take the bumper off, then you got to recalibrate, all these sensors that have all this fancy stuff. And that reset on those sensor recalibrations is going to be $500, right? And it's going to have no cost of goods and it's going to be pretty profitable. And so I think there's this whole new suite of other repairs that we're going to need to do that we don't even know about today. We think about EVs like the average car we work on, say, is 100,000 miles. Like, what is the average GM electrical vehicle with 100,000 miles going to look like? Like, we don't really know. Nobody really knows, right? And the whole new suite of issues that's going to have. And then I've got this other thing. I like us like your take on this. I've heard that there's like, so manufacturers can make these things, right? There's no limits there, but it comes to this issue with grid capacity, and that the grid can only generate enough electricity to charge a certain percentage of the market share. And then after that, it's kind of at capacity. And I've heard it's been like, I don't know, 8 to 10%, something like that of market share. And then they have to like build nuclear power plants, or there has to be some sort of like new energy source to overcome a grid capacity issue.
Yeah, look, I've been speaking with a lot of smart people, and I think that there's going to be challenges along the way for continued EV adoption, but I don't think that's going to stop it. For me to say this, like, I don't have a horse in the race, right? I just love observing and seeing how this is all growing, and I'm really, my audience is both sides of the aisle, quote unquote. But I do think that I never bet against innovation. I think there's a market for internal combustion, there's a market for electric vehicles. But I think that as long as there's demand and demand is growing for EVs, I think that, the market will find a way to be able to, fulfill that demand one way or another. So I think there's going to be challenges, but I wouldn't say, like, I'm not of the belief that, like, suddenly, like, hypothetically, if there's all this demand for electric vehicles, that, the grid wouldn't, I'm no grid expert either, but that it wouldn't get upgraded or whatever needed to be done, however it needed to be done, the right lobbying groups, whatever, in order to make it happen. So that's my, non-technical opinion.
Yep.
But I also think we have, there's a long time till it gets there.
Yeah.
Right. Like, market share is not growing. It's not doubling every single year or anything like that. It's not exponential yet. And so I think that's, it just buys time for these advancements to happen, especially if we've gone through this like zero interest rate period where, consumer spending was just like off the charts. And now we're, entering more of a contraction. So I think, I think it's going to all get all get figured out over time. I have no idea what that market share looks like, the split, in 10 years. But I do think it grows from here. The question is how much and how far.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and that's the main. I guess that's my. I think the people think the adoption's really quick, but I think the tail. It's a much longer rollout. And what does it look like in the end? It's probably a mixture. You've spoken about this, I know, where it's not 100% EVs, but there's EVs. There's like plug-in gas or whatever, where it's got both, and then there's all gas, and then maybe there's hydrogen or another fuel type as well. But at the end of the day, all of them need to get fixed, right? Like,
What about robotics? Like, have you heard of RoboTire, the company RoboTire? Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it. I've seen them. I know Discount Tires got a bunch of them or testing them out west. And it's interesting, We don't do enough tires to like justify it. But yeah, I guess if we could have a robot change brakes one day, that'd be cool. But I think I think we're a long way away from that.
You don't seem too enthused.
I don't know. I think there's so many other little things they got. Like these cars, we think about these cars, right? Like it's not like it's a putting together a car in a factory where everything's perfect. Like things get rusted. You got to spray. They got to soak. Things got to like something breaks. They got to like a stud breaks, right? They got to be able to like pop out the stud and put a new stud in. Like the idea that a robot is going to like figure all that stuff out, we're
you're skeptical.
It's not like it's making a pizza here. So
yeah, well, we saw how that ended up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. What really how that does evolve. I think RoboTire. What impresses me about them. By the way, I'm a small LP in RoboTire through a fund that I invested in, but they are. The fact that they're actually operational and you could actually see them replacing tires, it's pretty damn impressive.
Okay.
So
I'll have to check it. Maybe I don't know if RoboTire's the one that does it actually change the tire from start to finish?
Yeah, it does. It's pretty remarkable. But I think you're right. I think Discount Tire is the one that's tested. I could be wrong, but
I'm looking at this thing.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if robotics.
No, I think it was a different one. I think it was one that just it didn't take it off the car. It just changed the whole thing. Like you put it on the. And it took off the old tire, put the new tire on, but then a human had to like bolt it to the car.
Oh, got it. No,
it was just the machine part of it. But yeah, could be the future. Could be my shop, just a whole bunch of robots fixing cars, changing tires, and like one employee with a kiosk.
What's next for your group? Are you continuing to be acquisitive, looking to make more acquisitions here? What's the deal?
Yeah, so we're constantly looking at buying out other franchise units, other independents that we can convert. We're looking at new markets. We've looked at DC, we've looked into like Northeast, we looked into the Midwest, we've looked at Florida. But part of it is for us, like we want to go in, we want to buy a group of at least 5 stores, 4 to 5 stores, existing Midases, right? And then which gives us enough like payroll or dollars to be able to hire the district manager to live in market and to manage it. And then from there, we got to build it up to like 6 or 7 in that market to really like.
Yeah. So you really want to have a district manager over all those GMs.
Oh yeah. So I got one district manager. Kind of my structure is like, it's me, my brother, we have a COO, and then the COO has 4 district managers that report to him. And then each one of those 4 district managers oversees roughly 8 stores. And now all my stores are like pretty consolidated. And so they can get, from 15 minutes from one to the next. So that makes it easier to manage. Anything more than that, if they had 10 stores or 12 stores, that becomes too many, right? To actually like get in the week to actually help and not just be like high level. But they've like 4 stores. It's kind of like not enough to justify the payroll costs that person, that we invest in that person. So, for us
and who does the COO report to?
Me.
Got it. Understood.
Yep. And so, so for us, it's kind of like if we can fill a store in market, almost zero incremental overhead besides like the store level, right? But if we talk about going into new markets, then, I can't just buy one store in Maryland. I can't buy one store in like New York. Like for it to make sense, I gotta have a group of them. And so we're looking at that. It's also, listen, like we do about 40 million right now in revenue for our 32 locations.
How did I not ask you that yet?
I don't know, but you can add it sooner. But yeah, we do about 40 million. But like, my best store, so 1.2 million a store. My best stores do over 2 million. My worst stores do like, 700 or whatever. So in theory, like, if I can get all my stores to 2 million, which is totally possible, I mean, we could be doing 60, 70 million in revenue and in very strong margins, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
what's the net margin on 40 million?
12%.
Got
So
it.
we make about 4 million or so.
Mhm.
About 150K a store. And so, we look at if we can double the sales, we more than double the profits too, because like a lot of the fixed overheads covered, right? And so, um, that's kind of like our primary focus. Yes, grow and acquisition side, but also like harvesting and getting a lot more out of what we already got here.
Fascinating. Brian, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for just sharing your knowledge and experience. Super interesting. And as a dealer, I didn't know these numbers, the economics of an auto repair business. It's just not something we focus on or have ever focused on. Again, we're not a franchise where, service is a big part. Even if so, like franchise dealership business is still very different from the,
Yep.
Standalone auto repair business. So just fascinating insight. For the audience that's curious about this, wants to learn more about you, your platform, where can they go to learn more?
Yeah, but Twitter at Brian Beers is where I'm the most active. Um, I have a podcast as well. It's called Business with Beers. I primarily focus that on helping other people get into franchises, not just automotive, but all types of different franchises. And so, I'm spending a lot of time on that as well, which is a whole nother business and conversation in itself. But, franchising has been great to me and my family. And, I think it just happens to be in automotive, but, the opportunities exist in home services and all different types of models. So,
And
that's the best place.
and why did you start that? I'm curious. I have some. I'm speculating. I have some reasons why, but in my head. But why did you start the this kind of media business on the side?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was on Twitter, I was talking about growing, how growing our franchise business here. And so I had all these people come to me asking like, how do I don't want to do automotive, but how does this, how can I do this in X, Y, or Z, or what should I look for? All these questions. And we've bought and sold other franchises too along the way. Midas is our most successful one, but we had some others. So I've some pretty good experience in all kind of facets of it. And so, I was like looking for ways of how can I help these people and how can I, make some money on it. And so there's this whole worlds of franchise consulting, franchise brokering, whatever you want to call it, where, we kind of act as, middlemen to help. I joined this network. I've got like 700 brands that are part of this network. And then people come to me, I kind of figure out, and I have this team I'm building, but, we figure out what are their goals, what are their skills, what's their budget, where are they located. And then we can take all the information and then kind of filter through the 700 brands to say, here's like whatever, 4 or 5 options to start with that kind of meet all your expectations. And then, we make introductions to the brands, and it doesn't cost the candidate anything. And if they end up signing up and we help them find a brand they love, the franchisor pays us a referral fee. And so,
Wow,
that's kind of the business model. And
that's cool, man.
anyway, I'm like pretty good at it because I actually like know what I'm talking about. Where a lot of people that do this, who are in this industry, come from corporate America, like they have no idea, they've never owned a franchise, like they're just
Yeah.
regurgitating stuff they learned on a course. And so, I have a unique perspective on it.
Yeah, and it's fun to, like for me at least, the media is a creative outlet.
Yep.
It's a place to just be very creative and try new things. So I definitely resonate.
Yeah, and just connect with other people. I connect with all types of cool people and private equity guys want to learn more about franchising and automotive. And I make a lot of new friends. So it provides a good outlet for that too.
Well, dude, this has been great. Thanks again for coming on. And that's just been a true pleasure.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please give the podcast a rating, consider subscribing to the show, and check the show notes for links to what we talked about. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.